This is a Sandy Boy Productions podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to I'll Have Another Podcast with Lindsay Hine. I'm your host Lindsay, and I'm so grateful you're here today. Today you are listening to episode 305, and it's a little bonus episode, a little extra episode this week with Tina Muir and Knox Robinson. These two amazing people just started a new podcast called Running Realized. I listened to the first episode a couple weeks ago and knew I wanted to have them on this show so that you all could learn more about it if you aren't already tuning in. Now, Tina's been on my podcast before. I just went back and checked. She was actually episode 5 of this podcast, which is just crazy. That episode aired April 2016, so it's wild how time has gone by. I know that's just like what happens, right? Time goes by. It's really not that wild, but here we are. Anyway, Tina hosts the podcast Running for Real. She's a 2:36 marathoner herself, and she had this idea for a new podcast and has partnered with Knox Robinson. Knox is the co-founder of Black Roses NYC Run Crew. He has spent many years working in the music industry. He is a 2:33 marathoner himself, and we're going to learn a little bit more about his life and what he's up to in this podcast episode. But friends, Running Realized is the podcast we're here to talk about. Running Realized is a space to explore, discuss, and provide insight to create meaningful change. Tina and Knox tell stories, consult with experts, and search for actionable ways that we all can be a part of the solution. I enjoyed the first episode of the show so much, and they already have another episode out, so it's an every other week show. So this conversation will give you a little bit of a glimpse into what the show is all about and what the meaning behind it is. Well, today on the podcast, I am so excited to welcome Tina Muir and Knox Robinson to the show. Welcome to All Have Another, friends.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Stoked to be here.
Listen, everybody, we tried to do this, and Knox was hanging out in a tent in Tanzania. He's way cooler than the rest of us, and so we had to reschedule.
Yeah, thanks for your patience as we reschedule. I just off the plane, and as I was saying, I swapped the mosquito net tent for a sterile Sheraton in downtown Brooklyn. So this is this is what you get.
So why are you at a Sheraton though? Don't you live in New York?
Actually, I relocated to Los Angeles about halfway through at the closer to the end of last year. I still kind of go back and forth, seeing family and friends, but most of my stuff is in Los Angeles. But I stopped back here on the way back to LA.
Oh wow, sounds like a glamorous life.
Well, no. That's why I always keep the video off. It's less than.
Well, okay, friends, Tina was one of my very first guests. I think, were you maybe episode 5, 6, 4? I don't know.
I'm sorry, Lindsay. I cannot remember which number I was. But yeah, it was pretty early on, I think.
But we've formed a friendship over the years, and Tina and I, we learn a lot from each other in the podcasting world, and it's been really fun to see your show grow and change, and you evolve into the person and podcaster that you really want to be. We had this long conversation about that last week, and I've been thinking about it a lot, and I'm just like, it's beautiful what you've done. So congratulations, Tina.
Well, thank you, and I feel the same for you. It's really coming together.
And Knox is a guest who probably should have been on the show by himself a long time ago, but here we are today. We get to learn about your new podcast together, Running Realized. But real quick, Knox, before we talk about Running Realized, give us like a brief synopsis of your history with running culture.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've been working in and around running culture pretty ardently for, I guess, maybe the past 10 years. Grew up around running, watched my dad run in Southern California in the late 70s and the early 80s in that running boom of that time. But I guess a few years ago, 10 years ago at this point, I started having some life changes and was moving away from some of the other kind of work I was doing. I've worked as a magazine editor and a music biz manager as well, and I was kind of stepping away from the pressures and the vicissitudes of that lifestyle, and wanted to explore the centrality that running has in my life. So I had this idea coming out of the magazine business that I would create an expensive luxury running magazine, and put together the pieces for that, and shot 80% of the first issue. And then Instagram kind of took off, and Instagram was like much more fun. So I still have a hard drive of like all these fashion images of Olympians at a training center in Mexico in the desert, really incredible work. But yeah, I had more fun just getting back up to my old tricks. So here we are, 2021, and I'm excited to pair with Tina for a new venture, to get this podcast out and to share some ideas.
Tell us about Running Realized. Who came up with the idea and what is it? I listened to the first episode and it was wonderful.
Thank you. Knox, do you want to say it or shall I?
Well, yeah, no, Tina, like jump in. I mean, all credit goes to Tina to have this idea. I think if I related my perspective on the genesis of the podcast, it would be more comedic than perhaps Tina's straightforward telling, the truth, as it were. I'd probably embroider the story and give myself a little undue credit. So Tina, why don't you just take it and tell what really happened?
Well, I mean, it's going to come back to the fact that I was, so for many years I'd followed Knox, and I'd just kind of looked at him from afar and just been so in awe of him, but he felt way too cool
for me
to ever be. Yeah.
I feel like, that.
There's no, I felt like I was in school and like he was the cool kid. And so I was like, I'm not even going to try. And so for a long time I didn't. And then it was actually a mutual friend of ours. I was looking at my 200th episode and I was like, I gotta, find someone who I feel good about. And so I got a mutual friend to send this email, and Knox responded, and you ended up giving me your phone number so we could text to find a time. And I was like, oh wow, I'm texting Knox Robinson. And and then we talked on my podcast, and then we kept talking, and we just built this friendship over time. And then I was out on a trail run one day, and I was just thinking about the fact that I felt I could ask Knox anything, like uncomfortable questions that I had, or things that I wanted to know. Like, again, Knox wasn't only cool, but he seemed so wise, and I had so much to learn. So I was like, I really love that I can ask him these questions. And I thought, well, what if we put that in a podcast form? And so as soon as I got in my car, I called Knox, and I think Knox, it was like 6 a.m. or something your time. You were in LA, or maybe 8 a.m. or something, and on a Sunday, and he answered.
It was 6.
No, I feel like it might have been.
It's team. It probably was 6.
It probably was. Although Lindsay and I sometimes text at like 5 a.m, so it's not just me. But yeah, and then I was like telling him, just probably in my usual fashion of just rambling on, and he was like, sure, like, I mean, in your Knox way of like, let's make a vibe or whatever it was you said. But he basically said yes. And I had in mind the other person who I thought would be a producer. And so we reached out to John, and just, immediately we started talking. And then we had Knox, like 2-hour phone calls, like once a week for a while. And then, you'd been traveling a little bit, but I ventured outside of St. Louis for the first time and only time in a year to go to New York to record this. And yeah, here we are. Anything I missed, Knox?
Yeah, like I said, I don't really agree with Tina's version hardly at all. So I'm quite content to leave, the blush-inducing compliments to the side. But I will say that my own perspective is that it's what happens. Tina was making her way with her own podcasts and was rising up the charts and logging hundreds of episodes, and all that's great. But, sometimes you become not a victim of your own success, but you start, rather than like a lot of folks who just like let success feed their ego off the cliff. I think Tina, from my perspective, Tina got into this zone where she was starting to like have more questions than she had answers. That's an exciting place to be in, creatively speaking, and it's a real vital place to be in. It feels amazing to be in that kind of zone. Obviously, 2020 was an incredibly rupturous year for so many people, and my own perspective again was that Tina was kind of coming out of the fractious nature of that year, and it wasn't enough just to sit up on a podcast and chat about things. It wasn't just enough to move around the coterie of one's friends and kind of repeat the same opinions. And so much credit to Tina. She's like, what if my perspective, like, what if she cross-pollinated her own success with some other point of view? What if she went out and got, a hectic, problematic, occasionally challenging co-host on a project, on a podcast project. And so that's kind of how we came together. So I think it was really, Tina really emerged, or like, out of 2020 wanting to kind of like do more. And that was kind of cool to respond to that call to action.
That's what I love about this so much, is that I feel like 2020 left us a lot of us like, okay, I want to do more, but what do I do? And, oftentimes when you're out for a run, that's when your most creative thoughts come, at least for me. I don't know if that's the same for you guys. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think the fact this came from this would definitely attest to that. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like any good idea I've ever come up with is almost always when I'm running or exercising in some way, shape, or form. You mentioned 2020. I would love to know, what do you both think would be your biggest takeaway from everything that happened in 2020, from the awakening in our society and culture with racial injustice, but just COVID, everything? Like, it's just such a crazy year. And I know that's a big question, but when I ask that, what do you feel?
I think I was running last week and kind of thought about that very thing. And this is a little esoteric, but my biggest takeaway from 2020, 12 months ago, I thought things were going to be pretty bad. And I felt like a lot of people around me in the United States or in my circles in New York thought it was going to get better pretty soon. Like, people were like, I can't believe they canceled the New York City half marathon. I guess ready for the Brooklyn half marathon. And I'm like, y'all talk about the OB. Like, y'all think we're going to be in a race? So I think I invested so much in my own dire calculus for how things were going to go that I didn't, that I didn't anticipate that things might not go at all. And I think where we are right now, 12 months later, and I have folks around me who disagree, but I feel that we're just like stuck in a repeating pattern. I feel that we haven't really made headway on a lot of these things that really caught us by surprise. And that could mean everything from coronavirus to racial injustice. And so for me, bizarrely, I feel that obviously we joke about it, but 2020 still feels like it's still going on. And yeah, I don't know when and if it is. Not only is it, there's a Groundhog's Day classic film, but I just saw Palm Spring on a flight, and Palm Springs, and it's like that, just every day waking up and trying to figure it out. So that's my own takeaway, that 2020 is still going on.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And you're right that we haven't, there's so many things that we see already that show we haven't learned a damn thing. And and it's only going to keep getting that way. I mean, some people have, and yeah, we all have in parts, but not nearly enough. I think I'm trying not to let, Knox and I just had a conversation just before this. I'm trying not to let that influence me too much because it was such a powerful conversation and we can't wait to share it in about a month's time. But I think for me, it was realizing that we've got to keep pushing forward with the things that we feel need to change and speaking up for those who are underrepresented, but also realizing that we're never, I think in the past, I've always approached things, and Knox has very much seen this with me as a person. Like, I'm like, we're going to do this and then we're going to do it. Check. Like, I have like a goal in mind and then I'll get there and then it's done. All right, on to the next thing. Whereas I think I've realized that with everything that we've learned, this is ongoing. We might be able to celebrate things along the way, and we should celebrate things along the way, but there's no end point. And if you look back in our history, there's always been struggles. There's always been things that we've been trying to improve, things that we've been trying to work on. But there's no end goal. Like, we're always going to have to keep growing and developing and learning. And so I think for me, 2020 has taught me that, we have to just keep speaking up for the things that matter to us, but recognize that nothing's going to be perfect. Nothing is going to just solve itself. I don't know if that's making any sense, but I feel like I've just realized that I need to celebrate things along the way, even if they are small and we have a hell of a long way to go with things. As long as you're doing something and trying, that's what matters.
See, Lindsay, when like Tina's response is super fascinating to me, because not only is she one of the few people that I've seen who have like emerged from last year who wants to keep going down that path. I think that's pretty interesting. And then the other thing is a realization or a recognition that things might not always get solved with a checkbox. Like, we're not going to solve coronavirus with a vaccine. We're not going to solve, or with this vaccine, we're not going to solve racial injustice by a few social media posts or a black square on Instagram on a day and time or whatever. What is the work to be done? And so for Tina, on a personal level, to have, that mix of search and recognition of reality, that's a cool person to partner with on some of these challenging issues that we want to explore on the podcast. The other thing about the podcast is that it's not, we're not expert voices. Like, I think we really conceive of it as a platform to explore some of the ideas. And to be honest, I'm nervous about some of the topics that we have coming up. Like, I'm doing push-ups, kind of nervous. Like, I'm kind of like, I got to get ready for this one. So, but that's a good feeling to be able to be aware and vital and want to walk into a space and create a platform for other people's voices, other people's experiences, and then connect that with a listener. That's great work. That feels good,
I mean, it's brilliant, the podcast, and I'm going to ask you some more detailed questions about it. I want to say to the listener, though, it's like, you don't have to be a podcast host or have this big platform to keep moving forward. And I think it's a really beautiful thing that you guys are both using your platforms to do this. But I think a lot of people can look at who you are or what you do and think, well, what am I supposed to do? Like, I don't have the following or whatever. But part of that is like searching for what that looks like in your life when you're on your runs. And maybe it's not a podcast that gets thousands of downloads. That's okay. Nobody's way forward looks the same as everybody else's. And also, everybody is doing their own work in their own heart and their own lives. So I don't know. I just want to like say that to the listener if you're thinking, well, what am I supposed to do?
I hope we model that. I mean, I hope the podcast to the listener is even like models the conversation from two people who are very different. One of the only things that Tina and I have in common is a marathon time.
No, yours is faster. Remember, we got to that. You beat me.
Oh, I didn't know you were that fast, Knox. Jeez.
I know.
He's faster than me.
Wow.
That was that was awkward in our podcast taping when.
Can you guys just drop the PRs real quick so everybody knows, just so they know?
Tina's chomping at the bit to drop her little time. What Tina, what did you even run? I didn't even pay attention.
Isn't it 2:36 or 2:35?
Yeah, 2:36.
Yeah, 2:36. That's not bad.
NBD.
That's okay.
All right, Knox, drop it. What's yours?
I've done 2:33 in my day. A couple years ago, double knotted the laces and went out for a quick jog. 2:33. It was a downhill course, tailwind the whole way. That's all.
You ran the time. What was the course, though, by the way?
I ran it at Berlin.
Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, Berlin. I want to run Berlin someday. Tina, did you
fun.
run Berlin?
No, it's on my list.
Okay, yeah.
It was that hype year that Kipchoge was like coming off breaking 2, and he was gonna do it, break the record on the roads in Berlin. And the day of the race, it was kind of misty, kind of rainy, and the commentators are saying like, Eliud Kipchoge loves this kind of weather because it reminds him of the forest, the cool humidity of the forest where he trains in Kenya. So I was like, this is Kipchoge weather. We're going to do it today. Went out, ran my time. And then afterwards, Kipchoge didn't put the pieces together on that day. And he's just like, the rain. I was like, wait, what about the rain? And so I went out there. I was like, you psyched me up, Kipchoge. But yeah, a rainy one.
Did you tell him that? Because you know him, right?
Yeah, I mean, I give him a hard time. It's tough to know when you're sitting around what makes an impact. The guy's like, are you still talking?
What was your PR before that race?
I guess I had run 2:36 a few times.
Okay.
I think 2:36. Yeah, I'd run 2:36, and then I went into like a whole different level of training. This was just a couple years ago. So like in my mid 40s to level up and to run 100 miles a week after week, and to kind of really embark on a searching mindfulness practice, kind of all came together to run much farther and faster than I had ever previously anticipate. I'm also proud at the tail end of that moment. I ran like 69 and a half too, so I'm pretty proud of those.
Wow.
Motivated to lace up and go after them again once the lights come back on the race scene, for sure.
Do you want to break 2:30?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, I'm thinking 69 and a half. That's,
Yeah. I'm realizing like breaking 2:30 is the stumbling block. I got to think about running 2:25, because if you're thinking about breaking 2:30, you're always just going to run 2:33, 2:32. But if I'm thinking about what it's going to take to run 2:25, then that's a different mindset.
Wow, that's so cool. Okay, I had to ask questions about that because obviously, the marathon talk's always exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about what is Running Realize. Like, tell us the description of the show.
Well, it's a podcast which, we've talked already about a lot of the impetus behind it, but it is a show that is highly produced, or at least highly produced for the running space. We're not talking about a NPR level here, but it's highly produced. It has 6, is that right? 6 segments, Knox. And so there's we talk a little bit. We have I guess the first segment is a story from someone within the running space who is either making a change happen, who is an inspirational person, gives the listener a different perspective of life. We feature them and having them tell their story through their eyes. So it's very much just them sharing with us, with the world. It's usually very emotional, their experience about whatever the topic is going to be for that week. And then we have an interview with some expert who gives us some insights into what that episode is about, what is going on behind the scenes, why this could be the way it is. And then Knox and I break it down, have a conversation about it, about what we've learned, things that stood out to us. Then we give at least three takeaways, which is where you said, for the listener, what can I do? One of the goals of Running Realize is to try and give people, like, here's something I can do. So you mentioned, what can the listener do, with our episode 1, which was about the list, which Knox can talk about in a minute. one of the calls to action was go to USATF's website and type in your zip code. You can see what running clubs are available to you, and then you can go volunteer or support or something. So one of the goals is to be able to give people actionable things they can do at their own level. And then the final segment is some kind of creative piece from someone within the running space. So it's going to be like a poem or part of a book read, or so we're thinking, I don't know if we want to give too much away, Knox, but about some of the upcoming ones, because they're really cool. But just something creative from someone within the running space to wrap it all up. And we had Circa 95 let us play a part of their song in episode 1, which was so cool. And yeah, anything I missed, Knox?
No, I mean, it sounds like heavy lifting, but to put that much content in one episode, but I think hopefully it's like a cohesive experience for the listener to kind of step into that conversation. That's what I was saying, like the relationship with Tina, like hopefully is a model for folks, or a potential model for folks in their own lives. Like, how do you share about an issue? How do you explore something without the need to be right all the time? How do you move into an uncomfortable or a new subject with openness and not sort of have these barriers where we're afraid of being judged or we're afraid to be wrong? How do we set ourselves up to make mistakes? I'm dragging Tina into mistake making.
Oh no, I am definitely up there. I mean, yeah, you've seen that it's definitely learning for both of us.
How do you handle the uncomfortableness of some of the topics you're going to cover? You mentioned you had to do push-ups to kind of prep yourself for that. How are you handling that and like the feedback that you think you might or may not receive?
I mean, it's real life. I mean, I was only half joking about that, but it's just like with running as a metaphor. We really have to kind of embrace that. We really have to sit down and think about it. And that's just kind of how I live my life. I mean, I think part of my temperament, but also just, growing up Black in America, like I've spent my entire life thinking about some of these challenging things. And once you have a process for embracing that discomfort, then it applies to other aspects of your life. So for me, kind of thinking about, my own perspective on culture or Blackness in America also is a rubric for me to understand perhaps what women might be experiencing, or it's an opportunity for me to kind of like listen to the voices of underrepresented athletes or runners in other aspects. And so that can apply to a whole range of identities and challenges, So I think that's part of the inspiration for the show as well, is kind of showing ourselves to be vulnerable enough to explore these ideas.
All right, friends, a quick break here to thank Previnex for supporting this podcast. Previnex is where I go to for all of my vitamin supplements, protein powder, and kids vitamins. They have a product called Joint Health Plus. It not only alleviates joint pain, it also protects your joints so that you can have longevity in this sport. I use it myself every single day. We have seen so many raving reviews about this product from runners in this community. So many runners have found improvement in the inflammation that they have and are feeling their best using Joint Health Plus. You can all check it out, and definitely check out their protein powder as well. The Nourify Plus protein powder that they have, we use that every day here at our house. 2 scoops provides 20 grams of protein, and it has all sorts of vitamins and minerals in it as well. So check out Previnex, the best products on the market. They are clean, they are effective. You can use the code ANOTHER at checkout, Previnex.com. Use the code ANOTHER and you will get 15% off your order. All right, friends, back to my conversation with Tina and Knox. So the show, I know the first episode is the list. Can you guys tell us what the list is?
Yeah, the list is like an interesting thing. The list comes from this idea there's a man named Gary Corbett. He's the son of Ted Corbett, who's sort of seen as the father of ultra distance running in America. He was the first Black American to represent the United States in the Olympic marathon, first president of New York Roadrunners, helped create the New York City Marathon course. Incredible icon in running culture. And we're starting to see his legend burnished over time, and more people kind of find out about him. His son Gary has been great to really establish the ongoing history of Black American participation in distance running starting in the late 19th century. And one of his emails that he sends out, there was something called the list, the list of the Black American women who have broken 3 hours in the marathon. And you're like, all right, well, let's open this email up. And the email was short. It was only, there was, I might have got the email a couple years ago, and there might have been like 9 names on the list. And I knew some of the people in real life, The list has since expanded, and now there's still fewer than 20 names on this list, as Gary Corbett has organized it. You tell that to folks, Black, white, brown, whoever, and everyone's like, no, that can't be true. And then you're like, you let them wait for it, and then you can see it happen. They go back and they think about the Black women they know who run, and they're trying to come up with a name. And then it really might be that finite. There really might be fewer than 20 Black American women who have broken 3 hours in the marathon. Now, the list, like any list, is arbitrary. The 3 hour barrier is arbitrary. So when people kind of take it too seriously, I'm like, it's not the point. The point is the point is by putting a frame on something, it helps us understand it. It's not about getting on the list or not being on the list or who. It's about the idea that the list points to. And so for our first episode, we interviewed Marilyn Bevins, who was the first Black woman, as far as we have records of, who broke 3 hours in the marathon. She did that in the early 70s, and was really like a world-class runner in her day, second at Boston in 78 behind Mickey Gorman. So a real trailblazer in that era. And then we also interviewed the fastest woman at that list. So that's Simia Akbar, who ran 2:34 at the New York City Marathon back in 2008. So to hear those voices united over one concept, but different generations and different experiences was super fascinating for us to explore on the show.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I can't say enough about how well done the show is. And when Tina said it's more highly produced, and she said, don't compare us to the NPR though. No, it is that good. It is that well produced. And the storytelling where I can just picture as a podcaster what went into the behind the scenes. Like, you're feeding her questions, but she's telling the story. And then your voice is kind of removed or whatever from that storytelling piece. And it's just, I can only imagine the hours of work that went into making that sound as professional and well done as it is. So well done to you both, and to John. And the music is great. Well done.
Thank you. And we have got to add a few more names
yes, go.
Have helped us, definitely. So Daniel Brunel has done the sound design, mix, and original music. And then we have Gordon Bramley, who's the editor. Mari DeMonte is the created the cover art. And Knox, I would love for you to say a bit about her and how she made that piece, because it's so amazing how she did it. And then Toby Kelleher did the text. So we do have, it's not just us, and in addition to John, but we do have a whole team behind us. But yes, it is a lot of work. But yeah, Knox, tell the listeners about the cover art that Mari made.
Yeah, we just wanted to do something. I mean, it's an original woodcut, so Mari, as a great artist, it's her side thing, but does have a background in the arts, and so she made an original woodcut with tools. And she's sending me the work in progress. And I was like, well, she's taking it too far, as I hoped. So yeah, she really created this original, again, woodcut with hand tools, and then created the print with ink. And so that sort of stylized, and her color selection and all that really speaks to, I think, her, and as Toby kind of like helped frame it up on a graphic design level after, I think it really kind of speaks to, kind of like political broadsheets from, the 20th century, and just has a little bit of a different energy to it, just as like a reference to maybe the social justice aspect of the show. So hopefully the cover art is a little energetic, and it draws people into what we're cooking up.
And then I want to ask you both, like, the risk you're taking for like going so big, right? Like, this is a lot of investment for you to do this, and like, you never know, like, is this gonna work? How, so talk about what it's worth to you and what your big dreams are for the show.
I firstly just want to say thank you to Tracksmith. We wouldn't be able to do this without them. They have been a huge support for us and made this possible. I mean, it's hard to envision it because there's so many topics, and even as we go through an episode, usually as we're going through an episode, we get 3-4 ideas for other future episodes. There's so many things we could cover. But yeah, I mean, I would love for this. I mean, it kind of is in some ways to go beyond just the running space and make it be, a cultural piece that people use as a way to understand some of the discussions that are going on, some of the changes that are happening. And just as we mentioned earlier, like the shift in seeing things through a different lens, through a different perspective, maybe where we have maybe written people off or had a certain opinion of something, hearing this and just seeing it differently, thinking about something. We have one coming in a few weeks that I think is really going to make people think about the way they cheer for people in races.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there's a lot of elements that, I would love for it to end up just as not just big in the running space, but in the general space of the world. I don't know. Knox, I want to hear what you have to say here.
Yeah, I think I just want to normalize discourse, civil discourse and conversation. I really think that it's cool. There's so much virtue signaling that we see, maybe not enough, but there's a lot of virtue signaling that we see, especially on social media. People, really want to get credit for their book lists and their activist. All of a sudden, it's like cool story, but I'd really like to just have a model for people unpacking something challenging. I think that the medley of voices with a white woman from England and like a black dude from the United States just having passion for running and an interest in social justice. What does that friendship look like? What is really this is kind of also listening on what a conversation on the phone would be with me and Tina, like to her point about like, having questions and having that friend circle. Like, this is an opportunity to take some of that inspiration and share it with folks again. I think before last year, I think that we were starting to see little kind of there was interest in the lost art of conversation. Mm-hmm. And then we lost a lot of ground last year. So hopefully as things kind of calm down, we can really normalize conversations again and really not just shout each other down or meet others with silence, but how do we really speak with one another,
Wow. Okay, I'm going to ask a question that's like really basic, and I don't know, some people might think it's annoying, but I'm going to ask anyway. What do you both say to the person who, did the black square last summer, who like really rallied, who, like you said, showed their book lists and like really wanted to do the work, but now feels like, am I like posting about this too much? Am I not posting enough? Like, worried that people are going to judge them. Either way, I know that's so basic, but I think a lot of people feel that way. Like, what do I do in this world on social media?
Tina, I'm interested, please.
Well, what comes to mind to me is a conversation where I heard Emmanuel Acho recently talking about the fact that if you're gonna be an ally, if you're gonna be someone who speaks for underrepresented groups, or you have passion for something, you feel that something isn't working the way that it should, something needs to change, you need to be able to speak up and say it. And that means a lot of it is being prepared to have people, as pathetic as this can sound, but it's what people are scared of, is be prepared for people to unfriend you. Be prepared for people to say, I'm not going to listen to your perspective. Like, you're not, you don't understand this or whatever. Like, be prepared to lose people. It really is going to be what matters to you. I mean, there's certain things that others may be passionate about and want to speak about that for me aren't something that I'm willing to stick it all out there and say, like, this is really important to me. But everyone is going to have some elements, some things, just as we all have loved ones or people who have gone through certain health conditions, and those are going to be important to us. So I think it's about, you've got to find what matters to you. And ideally, we should all be doing all of them, but we also only have so much headspace. So I just feel that if you want to continue to educate yourself, I mean, that is, there's no question about that. You want to continue to read and watch and listen and learn. But we've got to think beyond the fact that your parents might be from a different generation and they may not agree with you. I mean, I've had uncomfortable conversations with my parents, not that they have particularly wanted those conversations, but because I've said, this is really important to me that we speak about this. And so you have to be prepared to deal with exactly what Knox and I are doing with this podcast, going through those uncomfortable conversations, saying the wrong thing and being able to say, sorry, that was not right. I meant to say this, and then moving on, or talking to your parents about it, even if that means them saying, like, you getting into a bit of a discussion on a weekend, set aside a time to have a conversation with people. So that's a very long-winded and rambly answer, but I think if it means enough to you, you'll find a way to deal with that fear of being judged, or fear of losing people, fear of losing followers, or whatever it might be. And Lindsay, you and I talked last week, and I said, I feel so much, having stepped out in this direction of where I'm going, I don't care anymore. Like, if I'm not speaking to you and you want to go find someone else, go. Like, that's on you, that's your choice. But this is who I am. This is what matters to me. So I'm going to keep talking about it.
I love that. I mean, one of the things that Tina's speaking to is the spirit of curiosity. And I think that if we're kind of waking up each day, that's there in running. That's what keeps our running engaging. That's what keeps our running practice vibrant, is that curiosity. Like, what can I do? How do I feel? What's the run going to be like today? Maybe sometimes it's performance based, like how fast could I go or how far could I go? But honestly, like, that can apply to so many different aspects of running. And the same is true for conversations such as these, having that curiosity to investigate ideas and to hear other people's perspectives is really just a good antidote for not only any intimidation or trepidation folks might have, but also for folks who think they got it all figured out. Like, as long as your kind of reset and default mode is one of curiosity, then you're in a good place, rather than kind of like lording your wokeness over people you don't even know on social media. It's like, that doesn't really kind of spark notes of curiosity. But as long as we're kind of coming with a humility that to that conversation, then I think that's probably our best way forward.
And then the last piece to that question and kind of topic, I think that is the grace, side to this, because I feel like people are constantly in judgment mode now. Like, what are somebody's motives? What aren't their motives? Do you guys have feelings on that piece, coming from where you both are in your life and your work and your mission with this podcast?
I definitely have, some thoughts about that. Like, I think that, there's a very fine line between speaking up and standing and saying things and saying, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to speak about, and not being like, you guys are so wrong, and going to write a massive Facebook post about like, I'm not tolerating you and your your views anymore. I'm just yelling at people essentially, because no one is going to listen to that. And Knox and I were talking earlier about like the humanity aspect of things. We have to keep bringing that back into the conversation, to remind ourselves that we are all human beings. We are to be able to learn and to be able to grow, as Knox just said a minute ago, you have to be able to listen, and you have to be able to understand that people are going to have different point of views. And if you're going to come at it with curiosity, that's what you need to do. It's not about yelling at people and saying, I'm right, you're wrong. And so, yeah, that's what comes to mind to me, which is, sometimes not easy to do when people put it, in the climate that we are in right now.
Did you have any thoughts on that, Knox, before I move on?
Yeah, it's just it could be anything, right? There's something in that we're starting to understand. There's something in these apps, these social media apps. There's something in our national discourse that's kind of making us rabid.
Yeah.
Really, whatever the topic might be, folks just really like lose their minds. And so, how do we disconnect that impulse? How do we kind of like defrag our communications? And really, I think that's only going to benefit all of these conversations that are ongoing, whether it's a debate over, women's marathon world record, or it's about, the events happening in the streets and cities around the United States. So I think it's really just about, just returning to that civility and being able to apply, to your point, that grace and empathy in all aspects of our conversations and so many aspects about our lives.
This is why I love that you guys are doing this podcast so much, because like you talked about the curiosity piece. It's like, if I can just try to understand why this person believes what they believe and feels the way they feel, that is going to provide that empathy that I need. And I think that's exactly what you are doing on this podcast. You're providing us a peek into the lives of these people who we might not understand their perspective, but now hopefully we'll understand it just a little bit more through these conversations and the storytelling.
Mm-hmm. That's the goal. Like, the story cracks through to make you think, oh wow. And then the interview is the piece that is going to make you can go down that a little bit more. And then Knox and I discussing it is really the processing it of, okay, how can I change this, or how can I improve this? So yeah, thank you. That's a nice compliment to hear.
Yeah. I mean, in a world of so much talking, it's so refreshing to feel and see the action happening. And like I said, not everybody's going to have, this big podcast, but that's okay. But it's just, I hope that this motivates other people to take action in their own way, whatever that looks like. And I thank you guys for putting this podcast together.
No, thank you for having us.
Let's wrap up. I haven't done these questions with you in a while, Tina, like for 5 years almost. So,
what?
Yeah, I mean, I launched my podcast in April of 2016. Crazy.
Oh my God. Yeah, that is crazy.
And so I must have interviewed you in March, because I launched with you, or you were, the first week. So I'm going to ask you both these questions. We'll run them down. Are you guys okay on time for like 4 more minutes?
Sure. Yes, please.
Okay. What is one thing professionally or personally that you'd like to do that you haven't done?
Oh, I feel like Knox. Well, I know we have one that's very similar. For me, the first thing that jumps to mind is, this is, I want to say this is embarrassing, but I know it's not, but it's huge. I want to write a book that ends up on the New York Times bestseller list.
I love it. Listen, Tina, I was just listening to a podcast, and the person was saying, if your dreams or like what you want to do doesn't sometimes feel embarrassing, then you're probably not dreaming big enough. And it's like, not that I think you should be embarrassed to say that, but you get those feelings when you say something that like feels really big, like, oh, does anybody think I actually like could do that? But
well, and for me, looking at like Alexi Pappas, and I'm like, as far as I know, Alexi hasn't done that. And I'm like, if Alexi can't do it, like, I mean, it hasn't yet, I should say.
Maybe she will.
How am I? So there's that thought that comes through.
Yeah.
But yes, that is the one that jumps to mind for me.
Own it.
For me, it's also I'd love to write a book. I have spent a long time tinkering around with a book that mixes running and running culture and elements of trashy 1970s spy novels.
Oh my gosh.
Needless to say, it's going slow, but that's also something that I haven't done yet. Hopefully I will. Let's see.
Oh my gosh, I love that. What's an accomplishment you're most proud of?
I mean, it's little wins every day, right? Laughing. The fact that I'm able to connect with the technology necessary to get this podcast taped is up there. Definitely up in the top 10 of lifelong accomplishments. But I don't know. I'm proud to be a father for sure, to two amazing kids. So I'm definitely proud to be a dad.
And that's where I struggled, because my first thought was becoming a mother. But then, and you know this, well, both of you know this, that, when you say that, when you have more than one, was that the first one? Does that mean the first one means more? So I'm going to go the sheet answer and just go back to my default for many years, which was representing Great Britain in a world championship, which is possibly if you had me in March 2016, that was the month I did it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'd just done it or maybe I hadn't quite.
I think you had just done it because I feel like we talked about it.
Okay. So yeah,
So
that
long
would
ago.
be my cheat cop out.
The interviewing skills were probably super cringy. Don't listen, guys. Don't go back. Get to know Tina now through this interview if I'm the one behind the mic doing the interview. Well, I always say with kids, you have a different favorite kid on different days depending on how people are behaving, but they're all your favorite.
That's true.
Okay. Who is someone fun, motivating, or inspiring that, I feel like Knox, you've met like all, you're friends with Kipchoge, so whatever, but who is someone fun, motivating, or inspiring that you haven't had coffee, tea, or cocktail with yet that you would love to sit down with and have a conversation with?
Tina?
Sorry, I should have prepped you. I usually do, and I
Knox,
spaced.
you know who mine is. I'm not going to say their name, but you know who it is. I'm going to say Brene Brown, who is number 1 on my list. So, yeah.
Do you have someone else that you're not sharing?
It's in the works.
Oh, okay,
slowly.
okay. You don't want to spill the beans because it might happen. Okay, gotcha.
It's gonna happen.
Oh, I know who it is. I'm not saying, but yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
For me, I'm still kind of hung up. When I was working as a journalist in the music biz, you would have these kind of like lists of stories, a list of people you always wanted to interview, always chasing that story. It's probably no surprise, like I'm a lifelong Lauryn Hill fan.
Oh,
So
yes.
I was always chasing this Lauryn Hill story right when she was really heading off the grid, so to speak. So always putting in requests, always trying to like find someone who knew and would connect. And then one time I was in Detroit interviewing the White Stripes, and I was like kicked back in my hotel room, and then the phone rang, and it was like Lauryn Hill. Like someone gave her my number, and she was like,
God.
I understand you're looking for me. And I'm like, yeah. And she just like went on this wild rant phone conversation. And I just remember like watching TV with the sound down, like not recording the conversation, with Lauryn Hill talking through me wild about like biblical prophecies and all this. And I was like, wow, this is incredible, but this is also really a wild, bizarre experience. So long story short, I'm still crushing on Lauryn Hill.
The miseducation of Lauryn Hill. That was like, I remember riding on the bus to like football games in high school. I was a cheerleader and having my Discman listening to the miseducation of Lauryn Hill. It was so good.
Lindsay, don't do that, because the album just turned 25 last week.
Well,
so don't date yourself.
I aged myself.
It's real crazy. Yikes.
It's true. Yeah, I loved that album. And the White Stripes, that's so cool. So you've talked to Jack White?
Yeah, it was awesome. He was wearing green. It was cool. Like, showed up and like we drove around Detroit, him and Meg, like in like their tour van, and they were just looking at old Motown buildings and just hanging out. Like he's like they're definitely like cool personalities, and Jack's like a heavy dude for sure.
Oh my gosh. I love the raconteurs. He's the raconteurs too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So good. Wow.
Now you see why I said I was too intimidated
too
to talk
cool.
to him.
Well, the Lauryn Hill story is totally different, but it kind of reminds me after the 2018, I think 18 New York City Marathon when Mary Katani won, I somehow got in touch with her agent and I was like dying to interview her. And I called her hotel room like, I kid you not, 50 times that day. Like I was trying so hard. And then by the time I snagged the interview, like I got in touch with her. We had to do it over this weird call recorder that wasn't what I was used to. And the audio was terrible. And I was just like so nervous the whole time because I knew I was only going to get like 15 minutes of her time. I'm still super proud though of like the go-getter, like I am going to interview Mary Katani, the winner of the New York City Marathon, because especially when it's not an American, it's harder to like get in touch with that person, you know?
Sure.
And I called her agent too, because I somehow got his number and he was like in the airport, like so annoyed with me. And I was like, what, can you do anything to provide any information about how I can get in touch with her? I don't know that I would hustle that hard right now, but 3 years ago I was like doing it.
I love that you did that. Persistence.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you go back and listen, the audio is terrible, but I did have a conversation with her and it was quite wonderful. Okay. I don't know why I made that about me, but I did.
No, I loved hearing that. I'm glad you did.
Okay. Two more questions. What is the best, most recent book you've read?
Knox, if you have one at the top of your head, go, because I'm trying to decide which one to say.
I've been in love with this collection of poetry by a poet working in St. Louis. The book is called Homie, Homie, and the poet is Dane Smith. Yeah, the writing is super intense, super exciting, super exhilarating to read, super challenging to read. So shout out to Dane Smith. Definitely one of the best books I've come across in recent years.
You didn't tell me he was from St. Louis. What are you doing? Get over here and come meet Dane Smith and come hang out with me.
For sure.
Okay, I've decided that I've already mentioned him once, but I really enjoyed Emmanuel Acho's Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man book. I felt like he just had a good balance of like education, teaching, heart, and just a lot of the things we were talking about earlier. So I'd probably say that one. So
the dude did all that. You loved the book, and then what did he do with it now? He's hosting The Bachelor.
I heard that.
He is. Yeah, Lindsay's going to love that. Yeah.
So we went through all the uncomfortable black man, this and that, something you love the book, and then all of a sudden now he just hosting The Bachelor.
I feel like you have feelings on this, Knox. We need more details.
I was just like, wait, this dude went from this to that? Like, all right, cool.
Maybe he's hoping to bring those conversations to The Bachelor. I will say, I'm a loyal watcher. And
of course.
Yeah. And they've had conversations this year in Tayshia's season and Matt's season that they haven't had before. There's some weird stuff going on right now, though. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Isn't that dude a runner? Isn't one of the guys a runner?
Matt James.
He runs with Brooklyn Track out on this side. Yeah, for sure.
Have you met him too? Of course you have.
Do I look like I hang out with the cast of The Bachelor? Come on.
I actually think, though, Matt James, I keep saying this, he's too good for The Bachelor. Like, he is the full package, it seems. And so he actually, I'm going to say, I feel like he's a guy that you would hang out with. He seems really nice. He does this give back food program in New York City. I don't know what it is, but
this is too much. Tina, we have to have this guy on Running Realize.
I sound uneducated here.
I don't know who this person. I've never watched The Bachelor in my life.
Google him. He seems very kind. Okay, what is your last message you want to leave with the audience today?
I think for me it would just be reiterating what you said earlier. Just because you don't have a platform, just because you don't, you might hear myself, Knox, or Lindsay talking about things, saying what we're doing and speaking out. We may have this confidence. It doesn't mean you can't do something within your own life. Maybe you are on the PTA at your school. You can have these conversations in some way there. Maybe it is like me, you're obsessed with the climate emergency and getting the word out, you could start composting. If you have the privilege to be able to pay for it to get your composting picked up. You can do something within your own life. It doesn't have to be on a big scale, but there are things you can do that will make a difference.
I love that. I mean, for me, I would just say, maybe for today, lead with love. I think that we're at a time now where it's an incredible call to action to make radical changes in our lives and the way we perceive our lives. And I think that a great way to do that is leading with love.
Lead with love. Thank you guys for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. This has been fun.
All right, everybody. Thanks for being here today. Thank you, Tina and Knox, for sharing what's going on with Running Realized and taking part of this podcast. I hope that you all will go check it out and see what it's all about. All right, you can find Tina on Instagram. She is Tina Muir 88. You can find Knox on Instagram. He is First Run on Instagram. You can find me on Instagram. I am Lindsay Hine 626. You can find me on Twitter at Lindsay Hine. And you can find me on Facebook. I'll have another podcast with Lindsay Hine. If you are in the market to look for new podcasts beyond Running Realized, don't forget, I started a parenting podcast. It's called Why Is Everyone Yelling? Something I find myself saying all the time at my house. It's a great resource for any parents out there, so definitely give it a shot if that is something you are into. All right, enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you this Friday with a new episode. Have a great day.